Who else are we missing?
There.
John.
Yep.
Did Braden leave us?
There's Dave.
Is that Dave?
Hello, Terry.
I'm still here. I'm just going to
Here,
try to.
how are you, Mimi?
For an hour and 20 minutes.
Commissioners, we are live on YouTube.
Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, all. We are in Chicago time today.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
11.
you, Britton. How are you?
Gotta sleep until 5.
Oh, we're open now.
And we're going to call the meeting to order at 11:28 a.m. We will begin with the invocation, which I understand Chris is going to do. Before we do that, just a quick housekeeping detail. Anyone who speaks, please say your name before you speak, because sometimes the clerk can't tell who it is just by voice. Some people have voices that sound close enough that we don't want to attribute a comment incorrectly to someone. So please say your name before you speak. Now, Chris, invocation, please.
My pleasure. Please bow your heads with me as we pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you today and ask for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace, O Lord, as we make decisions that might affect the residents of Berrien County. And Lord, continue to be with those in the front line fighting this virus, our medical workers, our frontline workers, and all of our essential employees. It's all this that we pray in your precious name. Amen.
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 Clerk Tyler will lead us in the pledge.
If everybody can join me, I pledge allegiance to the
Allegiance
flag
to the flag
of the United
of
States
the United States of America, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. Reminder to mute any devices that might cause echo or feedback. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Elliott,
Here.
Yarborough,
Here.
Harrison,
Here.
Hinkleman, Scott,
Here.
Curran,
Here.
Meeks,
Here.
Hugo,
Here.
Majeri,
Here.
Chickering,
Here.
Ballrap,
I am there.
Freely.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have 11 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. We have minutes from the April 16 virtual meeting, which were emailed to everyone, I think last Thursday or Friday, I can't recall. Haven't received any comments about changes being needed to those minutes. If anyone now believes there's something that we need to change or correct, this would be the time to say so.
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Freeling. I move that we accept the minutes from April 16th.
Commissioner Meeks,
Thank you.
second that.
Moved by Freeling, supported by Meeks. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yarborough,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Chickering,
Yes.
Ballrap,
Affirmative.
Freely,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Hugo,
Yes.
Jerry,
Yes.
Meeks,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, you have 11 yeas.
thank you. The clerk has some communications which were emailed out to everyone before the meeting. Madam Clerk, will you please make those a part of the record for this meeting?
Yes, there was 4 email communications received, one from Adam Rochford, St. Joseph, requesting business to be open again, received on April 16th. Phil Bain, St. Joe, requesting the board to reopen some things, received on April 20th. Delta County Board of Commissioners resolution requesting the Great Lakes shoreline be declared a disaster area and seek assistance, received on April 21st. Don Richardson's Berrien Springs requesting the board to not enforce the women in Michigan's overreaching actions and allow the county, its residents, and its business to determine for themselves the best course of action for the county regarding the virus, received on April 22nd. That's all.
Thank you. Nikki, appreciate your patience today. The Finance Committee meeting was not able to start on time because of some technical difficulties, and then the meeting ran long. So sorry that we're getting to you an hour later than we anticipated.
That's okay. I appreciate the time. I'm Nikki Britton. I'm the health officer for the Berrien County Health Department. And I just want to provide you all with a brief update as to what's been going on with COVID-19 and our response to it. Just to give you the summary right now, we have 186 confirmed cases, 171 presumed positive cases. These are people with the symptoms and an epidemiological link to a confirmed case, but they have not been tested positive. So 171 of those presumed. We've had 11 deaths and 101 people so far that have recovered. And we're defining recovery as they've made it through the period where they have been at least 72 hours symptom-free and meet that CDC criteria for no longer being infectious. We do typically see that the increase in an increase in deaths lags by about 2 to 3 weeks behind increases in cases. So it's possible that we're going to we'll see that death number continue to increase, but right now we're holding at 11 deaths. So a lot of the questions on everybody's mind right now and where we are in the response is what's next. We've been doing some really extreme social distancing here. We've had a lot of pretty much all of the economy shut down except for some very some limited businesses, and how do we move forward? And I think those are really important discussions. Those are things we're talking about at the local level. We're involved in some statewide discussions, although hoping that those discussions open up a little bit more in the next week or so. But one thing that I really want to stress is even no matter which path we take for reopening, we're going to have to contend with the fact that immunity to this virus by members of our public is going to be the only thing that will stop transmission. So this virus is going to continue to be with us based on the case counts that we've seen, and then extrapolate that out to however many people might have actually been infected and never reported to us. We know we still have a very small percentage of the population in Berrien County, in the state of Michigan, across the country and the world that have actually been exposed to this virus and have an amount of immunity. So all the steps we take over the next year or so until there is a vaccine in place to help increase that immunity without having to be infected first, there's going to have to be a lot of strategy as to how we balance these things. Also recognizing that the amount of social distancing and business closures that we've had, that's also not sustainable over the next several months as well. So there needs to be a lot of this strategy. Containment and mitigation is going to be a part of our future moving forward. I'm sure you've all heard this in a variety of ways, but come May 1st, we're not going to have some sort of light switch that turns on. We've been thinking of it more as a dimmer switch. So how do we gradually peel back some of the layers of social distancing, some of the layers of interventions that we have in place, peel them back in a way that makes sense, has some added mitigation to it, but do it in a way that doesn't cause this big spike, and then we're back to having to pull everything back to save lives. So some of the key things that we from a public health perspective believe need to be in place and are planning for locally is contact tracing. This is ongoing. I believe Berrien County is doing a very robust job at contact tracing. But we are contacting everybody who has a confirmed lab test. So all 186 of those confirmed cases have been followed up and investigated by members of health department staff or some staff members that have been assigned to this work to work with us from Spectrum Health Lakeland. So those phone calls have been made. We identify all those close contacts. Anybody who's symptomatic, we do a further investigation on those symptomatic contacts, and we continue taking that out so that we can try to follow that line of transmission. What makes that more effective is pairing it with testing. And that has been really tricky because there's been a limited amount of test kits available. In Berrien County, we are doing better than some other communities in terms of availability of testing. And we're working to strategize with both Spectrum Health Lakeland and InterCare of how we can make sure that we have a comprehensive strategy for our community to make sure that testing is as accessible as possible to our residents, but also being strategic, knowing that these are not supplies that we can just have as many as we want. We don't have unlimited capacity for running tests. We want to make sure we're still being wise and judicious, but opening up those priority areas of who can be tested as broad as possible. I know that the governor and Dr. Khaldun, the chief medical executive for MDHHS, have said a couple of times recently, anybody who wants a test gets a test if supplies are available. And that is a really important caveat. So we do have tests available in this community, not that every single resident of Berrien County can go be tested. And it's also important to keep in mind, this is not like getting a cholesterol test where you have your cholesterol checked. It's a good measure of where you're at, and you can extrapolate that test result over a period of time. With a test for an infectious virus like COVID-19, you get a test, it's only telling you about your viral load at that moment in time. Being tested immediately following an exposure, you'll get a negative because there hasn't been enough time for the virus to replicate in your body and be present in large enough quantity to show up on the test. Excuse me. So with testing and with some of the recommendations, even for asymptomatic essential workers to be able to be tested, there's a lot of caveats. There's a lot of things we all need to understand about when would it be valuable to test. We might be asking people who've had an exposure to wait a few days before they are tested. And that's not because we want to withhold tests. That's because we want to make sure that if we are using a test, we get accurate answers. A false negative can also be dangerous. And if somebody thinks that they don't have risk, they don't pose transmission risk to others. So there's a lot of that we're continuing to think through, and we are working very closely with our healthcare partners to make sure that we're in as close alignment with one another as possible. We want to make this as seamless as possible for the residents of Berrien County. We do know too that social distancing and PPE, including masks, those are going to be part of our future, even in this reopening process, whatever that looks like. We're still not 100% sure what the governor's plan is. If we do move towards a more regional approach to what reopening might look like, things like being able to maintain 6 feet distance between people, wearing masks in spaces where that's not possible or plausible, those are going to be things that are going to be with us for a period of time. Again, this virus is not going to just go away. Even if we start to have a decrease in some of our levels, it will still be present, and we're going to have a susceptible population that's not immune. So we're continuing to monitor all these things. There's lots of data points we're paying attention to. So in addition to those confirmed cases, we're looking at hospitalized cases, people in the ICU. A lot of those things are other good indicators as to what's going on in the community. All of that data taken together in one picture, or they need to be taken together to paint a better picture of what's actually happening, so we can monitor what is truly happening, how are different reopening and loosening certain restrictions, what impact that's having. There's a lot of data behind that. We're working diligently to create some dashboards. Some of them will be public facing, some more robust that will be used internally to make it more efficient for us to track those things, but then also communicate that with the public. I know it's been a long time coming. There's been a lot of technological things and working with many partners to make sure that we're bringing all the data together cohesively. We do expect there to be some more robust data that we're able to launch next week. So I'll stop there and I guess ask if there are any questions or other things that I can provide some more clarity or information on.
If-
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Scott. I have a question for Nikki.
Yes, sir.
Nikki, I'm just wondering, can you kind of touch on this or maybe find out these statistics if you don't have them? Where are we right now on our death rates versus the last time we had a flu outbreak? You know, how many people died from just the regular flu versus this flu of COVID-19?
So I'm not 100% sure. I will look into that further. I'm not 100% sure because flu deaths are not reportable in all communities. The numbers that we get, the way that works nationally for reporting is there are certain places throughout the country that where flu deaths are reportable, and then that is rolled up into an aggregate number and extrapolated for the county. I will look into more than that, or I will look into that more.
Okay. I was just wondering because I want to see what the past flu has done, especially to people in Berrien County, if they have any information on that versus this COVID-19 to see kind of where we're at.
So some other things that would make that sort of data comparison tricky is we don't also have numbers on how many people are ever infected with influenza. So even if we could identify and attribute and come up with a number of influenza deaths, the total number of people to come up with a case fatality rate unique to our geography might not be possible.
Okay, I was just wondering if that data was available. And thank you very much.
I'll dig into it further for you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Amy Yarborough. Nikki, I thank you for being here each time you meet. I would like to ask you a little bit more about the testing. It is so confusing that even the people that are doing the testing don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I heard on WSJM that they were doing testing and you didn't have to have a prescription. You could just go, and it was on M139. That's all they said. I knew that was Intercare. And so I had to go to the eye doctor. On my way back, I turned in, I said, marvelous, I'm gonna tell everybody there were 4 cars. So I'm in line and rolled up, and they were doing everything. The people coming out of the Intercare building there on the side by that big sculpture, that hand, and they were doing something through the window, either side. And so when it got to me, the lady said, do you have a prescription? I said, it said, come, it's free. You don't have to have a prescription. She asked me, why was I there? And I told her I was 78 years old, I want to know. And she said, you have to have your doctor fax us a prescription. And then we can see you. And she said, do you have insurance? And I said, I have. She said, good. So I pulled over and I called my doctor's office, and they said they know nothing of what to do. And they had a phone number, some kind of line, 678 something. And that was the same number the lady had given me that I could call that number. So people are not explaining well what you need to do. And then I went to do the doctor's. What do you say?
So I'm not sure I caught your question there at the very end. There was some echo.
Can you tell us anything? Can you tell us any way to get, how does it go? I won't go back, until I have a prescription, but what do you think the process is?
So it's my understanding, and we're actually having some meetings later this week to make sure that everybody's on the same page about the testing strategy and understanding what each other's doing. It's my understanding that a physician's order is needed if you show up at the, for Spectrum Health Lakeland at the COP Center on Hollywood Road. Right. A physician order is needed if you show up there. I was under the impression that at Intercare, a doctor's order may not be needed, but if you were symptomatic, you could be screened by a physician and potentially given an order on the spot.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's as open as anybody can just drive through and do it as part of their errands.
Yeah,
But I think for people who have a COVID-like illness, even if you haven't been able to get to your primary care provider, but I think you highlight a very important point, and I know it's incredibly frustrating, but there are so many actors that need to be responding here. We have so many different healthcare partners, and that's just on the healthcare part of response of COVID-19. Everybody is trying to act very quickly to do what they think is best. And sometimes we get a little bit out of step with one another because everybody's moving so rapidly. The guidance from the state is changing every single day. So I don't want to say that any of our partners are necessarily doing anything wrong. At the same time as the health department, we don't have any say over how those things are done. We're just continuing to make sure we're convening the partners, trying to help set that strategy, making sure we are working together and communicating that. So it's helpful to know what your experience was. We do have things in the works to try to make that, because I understand how frustrating that is at a time when almost everything in life is making people feel frustrated right now.
and thank you. And the lady asked me good questions. She did. She asked, well, what symptoms or why do you think you need, she asked me a lot of things. So it wasn't willy-nilly, and she wasn't, didn't flip me off. She gave me a card and all kinds of stuff. She helped me all she could, but they did not give me a test.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I have a
Other
question.
questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is Jim Curran. Nikki, you talked today about testing. The last time you reported to us, you talked about not having an adequate supply of test kits. Do you now have an adequate supply? Adequate?
So the health department does not have a supply because the health department is not doing any of the specimen collection or the testing of those specimens. We are relying on Spectrum Health Lakeland and Intercare now to be those providers. It's hard to define adequate. So I would still not say that what we have is adequate, especially under what the governor and Dr. Caldoun from MDHHS have recommended in terms of their priority areas and who should get a test and qualify for a test. We don't have adequate capacity for that. And not only is it about the test kits, but it's also about the number of specimens that could be analyzed in those labs per day. There is a limit to the amount that the labs can run. So that's why we're continuing to try to be strategic about who gets tested. If somebody is not symptomatic, there aren't other reasons, there hasn't been an exposure to COVID-19, that might be somebody who's not able to get a test that day, at least here in Berrien County. So the test kits, from what I'm hearing, the supply chain is opening up. We're able to get more of those test kits. At the same time, we're increasing the amount of testing we're doing. So it's not like there's a warehouse that's becoming filled. We're using them as they're coming in. We will hit a cap with the amount that can be analyzed on any given day.
I was glad to hear you say that going forward, more test kits are becoming available. Is that an accurate statement?
That is my understanding, yes. And again, we're not part of acquiring those, but this is what I'm hearing from our healthcare partners.
Thank you. I have a second question, if I may.
Sure.
A number of restaurants in the state and in the county have closed their dining areas, but still operated their kitchens.
Mhm.
Others have closed their dining area and their kitchens. Are either of those going to have to be inspected before they can open back up?
So that's a really good question. I'm not 100% sure how we would deal with a closure. I think that I think the state has issued some guidance. I don't know exactly off the top of my head. For those that have remained open with their kitchens, we've continued running in a slightly different manner, but we have continued running our food inspection program. So we have been maintaining some of our routine inspections. We've been maintaining a presence and contact with those facilities that maybe are doing more business right now or doing things in a dramatically different way than they did before, just to make sure that their processes are up to snuff. I'm not 100% sure if an inspection of the kitchen, if it closed for a few weeks, would be warranted, but I can look into that.
Well, by the time this is all said and done, those kitchens will have been closed for maybe 2 months. So
Yeah.
that's what prompted my question.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Nikki. Appreciate all you do.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Nikki?
Mac,
Yes,
Bill Chickering, just a quick question for Nikki. Across the country about the burnout level for healthcare professionals. I'm interested in how your team is doing.
So our team is doing a phenomenal job responding to a really, really big task. Obviously, heightened stress loads are something that we're monitoring and trying to pay attention to. There are some individuals with their roles that are logging lots of extra hours, some others not so much. I think we're doing a pretty good job of balancing that right now. It is a little bit tricky when then it's also hard to go to the grocery store, and then it's also hard to, pack a lunch every day. I mean, all of those sorts of things sort of add up with that work stress. I'd say on the whole, we're doing well, but it's definitely something we're monitoring, knowing too, we're in this for the long haul. There's going to be response from the health department for containment and mitigation strategies, I predict, for the next several months.
Great, thank you.
May I ask one more question?
yes, ma'am.
Mamie Yarbrough. Nikki, are you all working at home? You look like you're in the health department. What are you doing? What is it open by appointment? Were you able to keep all the employees? Those are my questions.
Yes, so we do have the majority of our staff are working in person because we do have the continuity of some very essential services. The way those services are operating definitely looks different now to accommodate social distancing, but there are certain things that we've had to maintain. We do have some staff that are working remotely as their job functions allow for that. But a lot of what we're trying to do for coordinating the response efforts and maintaining our clinical presence to the extent that we need to right now, we do have a lot of people in person. We are well practiced at maintaining 6 feet away from one another, having gatherings of 5 or 6 staff members who might need to meet about an issue. It's happening in a very big room. Everybody's been issued masks. We're doing all of those things, but there's a lot of activity at the health department.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions before we cut Nikki loose so she can get back to more important things? Okay, thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
We will,
Thank you, Nikki.
we'll be talking with you
Thank you.
pretty much daily going forward. So with that, we have a consent calendar and an added resolution, which would mean there'd be a total of 3 resolutions on the consent calendar. And before we get to talking about those 3 resolutions, we need to take an opportunity to see if there's any public comment limited to those resolutions. So stand by.
All right, we have no public comments on the resolutions.
Okay, no public comments. Are there any comments, concerns, questions that any of you have about any of those resolutions on the consent calendar, including the added resolution ending in 4231, which has to do with Berrien Bus? Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Mamie?
Mamie Yarbrough. I don't know if it's in the resolutions, but there is a requisition bill to be paid for the road department for Red Arrow Highway Union Pier intersection. We would ask that that be pulled.
You're referring to,
The Finance Committee.
all right, so that's the weekly requisitions ending in 4074, and you want to pull the one that had to do with your discussion in committee today?
Yes.
Max,
That's,
We don't
that's
want-
stand by.
Scott, Mac, that's 50263.
Thank you.
Got it, got it. Okay, and so we'll put that on for next week, because we, in all likelihood, are going to be meeting on the 30th.
Okay, we would like very much for it to have a week.
All right,
For the
With-
other members and all, because it is a vote of the whole commission, for them to have an opportunity to see and to any more facts they may need.
all right. Are you moving to approve the consent calendar minus requisition 50263, which is included in the resolution ending in 4074?
I make that motion.
And the added resolution.
And that includes the added resolution about bury and bust that ends in 4231.
Yes, I
Is that
agree,
right?
and I make the motion to cover all of that.
All right, so
Commissioner
that's the
Scott.
motion. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Scott will second that, Commissioner Elliott.
All right. Moved by Yarborough, supported by Scott. Any further discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Yarborough,
Yes.
Harrison.
Oh, wait, is there any Kalen in there? Any of those kinds of things? In the bills?
There are
or-
not. Maybe
Okay.
there are not on the other.
I say yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Chickering,
Yes.
Walrath,
Yay.
Freeling,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Bugle,
Yes.
Majeri,
Yes.
Meeks,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, you have 11 yeas.
thank you. Finance Committee, Chairman Yarborough, do you wish to report?
Yes, I do. We had a bid opening this morning. There were 11 bids, and we made a motion and support, and they were accepted. Do you want me to read them? It's a lot. There were 11.
No, you don't need to read them, maybe that's a,
You don't need to read them. They're already in the record.
Thank you. And then in our meeting, we had a meeting with Evan Smith. He's a director of, well, he's from Community Development, but Director of Transportation. And that's that resolution we just approved through MDOT. It's a regular, something that's done each year. The amount was $193,950. And it's up 36% retroactive to 2019 and the next 3 years, 20 and 21. So that needs to be signed. There are 2 sheets, and I'm glad you're there. I'm glad you're in the building, Chairman Elliott, because he needs you to sign that. We had a motion to accept our minutes from the April 16th meeting. And then we went into a meeting that we had requested to meet with the road department so that we could understand and discuss the bid that we opened last week that was for 3 different companies. For the overlook of the Union Pier Red Arrow Highway. Is that somebody standing on their head? Oh, anyway, for the Union Pier Red Arrow Highway work. We received many calls, the board members did, and so from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because there's an $80,000 difference, we want to look into this deeper and understand better. And that's why we asked that it be pulled from the bill list so that we can talk about it. And we will work to have a company in that position for us to be able to vote on it on the 30th. We don't want to hold it up. We just want to understand it better. we were pleased. We had a number of guests that were there. And one of them was Chris Cook from Marsh, Warren Parrish from Equalization, Steve Carlisle. Where was he from? Who was that?
He was from Whiteman.
Michelle Height, Supervisor, New Buffalo Township. David Bunte of Chickaming. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Chickaming Township, because they are very much involved in that work that's being done there. Their communities are putting money in for streetscape and trails. Marquardt, who was he with?
He was with Amber Marsh too, I believe.
Okay, that was the last name. That's what I'm just trying to say the name. And then the road department staff, Jason Latham's staff, and the name of the auditor, their accountant. The young lady was there.
Carrie Bennett.
Yeah, Carrie Bennett. The rest were commissioners and staff. Sherry Vance, Stephanie Carlson, Doug James, Administrator Wolf, Annette Krieger, and the committee. We were Yarborough, Harrison, and Scott. So I just wanted to let you know that it was quite well attended. And we had the information that we were asking for, and some things came out of it that we need to do and look at a little deeper. And so that is my report from the Finance Committee. Are there any other things that any other members have? Commissioner Harrison?
We did hear a report from Administrator Wolf regarding the end of the year balance.
Yes.
So that was, there no action was required of the committee.
Right, information. Thank you. Commissioner Scott?
Yes, the only thing I would like to add to that, Madam Chair, is I think this entire board needs to have a discussion on the wording of the road department motion, that may have to be tweaked a little bit to better land clarification on when bids are awarded. If they are over the lowest bid, then they need to come back to they shall come back to the Finance Committee. And we need to put something like that in there so that there's no ambiguity on anybody's part. Everybody knows that this is what happens. So that's something that we might want to think about working on as a committee and bring that to the rest of the board.
Certainly, because I think we came up with 3 interpretations of what it meant.
Yes.
Well, that's what we need to be really clear on that. Any other things for the Finance Committee? Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the Finance Chair? Okay, hearing none, Commissioner reports. Does anyone have anything that they would like to share with the group?
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Scott. I want to give some information. I think this is vital for all the entire commission to know. Bill Wolf and the financial department as well. I spoke to Dan Carrick yesterday, who's from Kim Lasada's office, and he explained to me that they're working on the 2021 budget right now. And the state has $1 billion in their basically rainy day fund. And the way it appears right now, the state will be in a $6 billion shortfall. So if they're going to use the 1 billion, they'll be down to a $5 billion shortfall that they have to make up someplace. What's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of cuts and a lot of funding programs. The state, he explained to me that if the state opens up from this lockdown of the coronavirus on the end of April, the counties will see an 8% cut in the revenue sharing. if the governor does extend this, and it would end, let's say, in the end of May, he said then the counties are going to see a 13% cut in revenue sharing. Now, this is a large amount of money that we rely on. And my questions are going to be, how do we recover from this? He also explained to me that what he was talking about on the $5 billion shortfall and the 8% cut and the 13% cut do not have anything to do with probably programs like indigent defense. He thought that was completely separated out because it was in a different program, but he was going to check for me. And one thing he did say is that this shortfall and that 8% and 13%, respectively, do not take into effect any Public Act 51 money. That's its own animal. And right now, that is taking a severe hit because of the gas and the road tax, the gasoline tax, because they're not selling as much. So that could be another potential loss for us. The other thing that I'm worried about for our budget, for the county's budget going forward into 2021, is what about a loss of our interest revenues and our loss of revenue from the casino? So I think all of us need to really keep an eye about this because we are going to see some shortfalls and we're going to see some real budget cuts. And we're going to have to be very careful with our money and what we're doing with our money and how we're spending it, because the last thing this commissioner wants to do is to lay off staff and to lay off people. Now, I guess yesterday the state is planning on laying off 6% of their staff, furloughing them. So this is a real problem, and I just want all the commissioners to know we really need to start thinking into the immediate future of how we spend our money and how we do our budgeting and everything else. So that's the only thing I had to say.
Okay. If there's anything more like that, let's try to put it in other business. And for the moment, let's do commissioner reports because we're way behind.
Okay, thank you.
I have Chairman Mamie Yarbrough. I attended a meeting yesterday of the Connexus group. It wasn't a board meeting, but our director, Todd Gustafson, wanted to bring as many of us as could to join them to explain what each department was doing and how they're doing. And Michigan Works, all their staff is working at home. I asked, just like I asked Nikki, they were able to keep everybody. They said there were young men that drove or did different driving and things, and they're using them to help deliver some of the meals that are going to different sites. They have them on the phone because their phone's jumping off the hook about unemployment, about a lot of things that they didn't normally do. But they have joined in with the unemployment offices to help them any way they can, because that's been bombasted with all the phone calls. And this meeting was the staff members, board members, and CEOBs, of which that's what I am, what is it called? County Elected Official Board. So there were people there from Van Buren County, Cass County, and all the staff. And it was very interesting for them to talk about and tell what they're doing with the operations and all those kinds of things. I don't quite know what this means. It's kind of contra to what Scott just talked about. But one of the last people that spoke was Al Pashoka. And he says there's a lot of federal dollars and they're coming here because it's an election year. And so in the next 2 to 4 weeks, there should be some more dollars coming to the state of Michigan. I don't know how it'll be designated or how they'll have to use it. But the departments or the employees at Connexus Group are still working on private and public grants and getting more things for Berrien, Cass, and Van Buren County. It was a very good meeting that we talked about. And this is what they're trying to keep up with their employees to know that they're okay, because they're offering them mental health care and just all kinds of things. And so they're all working, but very much in touch. And that's my report on that.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to share in commissioner reports?
Mac, this is Commissioner Freeling.
Yes, ma'am.
Just real briefly, on Tuesday, the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission met for their board meeting. We had the presentation of the audit, which was an unmodified opinion. And then there was also the work plan for the year that is available on Southwest Michigan Planning Commission's website. I'd encourage anyone to go to that to see the work that's being done this year. And then lastly, I sent to the commission, but it's also available on Southwest Michigan Planning Commission's website, a presentation that was done in conjunction with South Central Planning Council through the Upjohn Institute on talent match and future planning, making sure that the right jobs are being matched with the talent that we have available, and then also a housing plan for future planning through a toolkit that's offered through Upjohn. It's a great resource. I would encourage anyone to dive into it. That's my digest version of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Anyone
Mac,
else?
I just have a
Yes,
quick.
sir.
In addition to all our ELC meetings the last week, I attended a workshop that Mac had available for us a couple of days ago, and it was on the high water and shoreline erosion. And it was about 45-minute presentation. And if you didn't attend it Tuesday, you can see it on the action. It's one of the workshops that would have been available to us had we had the legislative conference. They've been giving some of those online so that you can attend them now, which is a pretty nice deal. But it is a pretty good workshop, gives a lot of statistics on erosion and all the Great Lakes, not just Lake Michigan, but the high water and how it affects everything in the area and going back 100 years. That's all.
Okay, thank you. And that was Commissioner Volrath. Any other commissioner reports? Okay, the next thing would be anything that the administrator wants to share.
No, nothing.
He doesn't have anything else, so now we're going to general public comments that'll be coming through the YouTube chat protocol, so stand by and we'll wait and find out if anybody has anything they'd like to share.
Yes, so we've already started kind of collecting those. Julie Warfel from Royalton Township. I want to thank the commissioners for the letter to the governor and their support of local businesses and our jobs. Adam Rochford from Lincoln Township. If social distance measures are working, why can't we open other businesses and continue to follow the guidelines? I oppose the unconstitutional laws from our governor. David Yardley with the city of St. Joseph. I would like to announce my candidacy here for County Commissioner for the 5th District for all of St. Joe City and precincts in 1 and 2 for St. Joseph Township. I would like to thank Commissioner Chickering for his current service and through the end of this year. And we're still paused for other comments. So I've asked twice now for any other public comments, so we will close public comments.
Very good. That concludes public comments. We are now at other business. The shorter topic first, the May 7, 2020 night meeting. It's still on the calendar. We can adjust that as needed as we work through the next several days. My hunch is, after talking with Bill, that we will be meeting on the 30th, even though that's a 5th Thursday. We'll have some things to tie up for finance notably, and perhaps some others. One of them being, right now we have a declaration of emergency that's in effect through the end of this month. A draft resolution was prepared, and that came from Captain Adams at EOC. It wasn't to suggest that we need to do it, but just to have it at the ready in case over the next several days it looks like we might need to move it out a week or two or whatever. We will have that flexibility. And that's one of the other reasons for meeting next Thursday, so we can be nimble and be ready to react quickly to any change of circumstances. We understand there may be some pronouncement coming today from the governor's office, not sure. But what we're doing today is certainly timely in light of what's been happening in the governor's office. So that moves to the other item of other business, which is the letter under today's date to the governor. It's been circulated, tweaked, a couple grammatical errors of mine were corrected. I appreciate everybody's feedback, and most particularly Bob Harrison and Bill Chickering. Is there any other change that anyone thinks we need to make to it? All right, if there aren't any other changes, this would be the time to entertain a motion to authorize me to sign it and send it on its way to Lansing. Is there a motion?
I would make that
Commissioner Freeland.
motion.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Scott, supported by Commissioner Freeling.
Excuse me, Mac, I believe that was Commissioner
That was
Hugel.
Commissioner Hugel.
Correct.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's,
I'm
thank you.
sorry. Okay. All right, so moved by Commissioner Hugel and supported by Commissioner Freeling.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Is there any further discussion about the proposed correspondence to Governor Whitmer? Or about the reason for going with a letter instead of a resolution? Because we had both of them prepared, and then the consensus was to just go with the letter. Is everybody still okay with that?
Yeah, fine.
All right.
Oh, may I ask, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it copied to the other counties or anything like that?
Yes, the protocol would be to copy all the other counties, to copy the governmental organizations, notably MAC, MTA, and the Michigan Municipal League,
Okay,
to copy our elected state and federal representatives, and to attempt an electronic delivery within the hour to Governor Whitmer, as well as provide hard copy via U.S. mail, and also to broadcast to all of our local media outlets, so
okay,
that we can get as much exposure as we can to this communication.
okay. And what I did say, I just thought of it, to the Nexus group when we met yesterday, was that there was a letter in the works from Berrien County, because I had read it, saying to the governor that what is good for Detroit area may not be good for Southwest Michigan or Northern Michigan. That's what your letter said, isn't it? The things that we need to be able to do.
Right, I think with the assistance of one of our colleagues, it says that what is necessary for Southeast Michigan is not proving to be best for Southwest Michigan, the Upper Peninsula, and other regions.
Yes,
That's specifically the reference where we're asking her to take consideration for a regional approach, which was one of the 4 items that Nikki Britton mentioned in her update.
yeah, to let us plan or whatever. But I also suggested to that group, because there were commissioners there, that their commission, they take it to them and consider writing a letter also to the governor, in that vein.
Right. Okay. Any other comments, questions, concerns about this? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll? And this is to authorize signing and sending the letter on behalf of the board to the governor and broadcasting it through the various outlets that we just discussed.
Curran,
Yes.
Freeling,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Hugo,
Yes.
Majerick,
Yes.
Meeks,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Walrath.
Affirmative.
Did you say it? Yarborough,
Yes.
Chickering,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 11 yeas.
Thank you. Given the one absence, the resolution passes unanimously. We do have one other public comment that was working its way through the pipeline, and I'll defer to Annette for that.
This is from Donald Richardson in Royalton Township. And I have to scroll back up. The freedom to determine our own actions is a God-given right guaranteed by the United States Constitution, specifically the First Amendment, and the Constitution is the highest law of the land. The woman in Michigan has no authority to interfere with this freedom, and enforcement of her orders is unconstitutional. And he provides those comments to you in addition to an email that he will be sending to you, I believe.
They got it.
They got that, okay.
Communication.
So that's in addition to his email.
Okay.
Yeah, we did get that.
Please thank all the folks who submitted comments.
Will do.
With that, the letter dated April 23, 2020 to Governor Gretchen Whitmer will be read into and made a part of the record of these proceedings. Dear Governor Whitmer, the Berrien County Board of Commissioners recognizes and fully supports the heroic efforts of frontline healthcare workers and first responders, as well as workers in the service economy. Likewise, we appreciate the need for appropriate executive orders and policies to mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus and promote public safety while also protecting our state and local economies. Our region is dependent on agriculture and tourism. It is important that we preserve these economic engines and the jobs that are currently locked down. Accordingly, the Berrien County Board respectfully requests modifications to current and future executive orders to remain within the boundaries of Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, parenthetical CISA, guidelines. Berrien County has 157,000 residents, and as of 3 p.m. on April 22, 2020, there were 177 confirmed positive cases out of over 32,000 in the state of Michigan. It is logical to recognize that the virus is significantly more impactful on areas with high population density and will disproportionately affect people of color and senior citizens with pre-existing illnesses, such as diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease. Executive action should not be based on the notion that one rule fits all locations. What is necessary for Southeast Michigan is not proving to be best for Southwest Michigan, the Upper Peninsula, and other regions. Local and regional flexibility is now appropriate, along with the ongoing need for responsible behavior, including social distancing, good hygiene, and personal protective devices for certain businesses and commercial facilities. Our businesses and jobs are essential to Berrien County and the state of Michigan. If we and the similarly situated counties are held to the same standards as the handful of counties in which COVID-19 is prevalent, there will likely be irreparable damage to our economies and to the entire state. The Berrien County Health Department is doing an outstanding job of mitigating, communicating, and recommending best practices as we go forward. The Board of Commissioners trusts the local public health officials to continue in their efforts to monitor and promote reasoned advice in connection with the safe reopening of Berrien County. We likewise trust the vast majority of our business owners and citizens to act responsibly. This board asks that you revise current executive orders to provide regional flexibility concerning the restrictions and prohibitions of occupational and personal activities as identified below, and to ensure a sensible and safe framework that respects the constitutional guarantees of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all citizens of the state of Michigan. The county board supports allowing workers in occupations which can successfully mitigate the spread of COVID-19 and socially distance themselves to be allowed to return to work. This should include manufacturing, production, property maintenance, and food services. We believe this can be done in a responsible manner and with due caution. We also urge you to allow citizens to purchase such things as grass seed, house paint, and gardening supplies, and to engage in recreational and outdoor activities which common sense should allow. Those of us in border counties can readily understand why citizens are flocking to Lowe's, Meijer, Walmart, or Home Depot stores in Toledo, South Bend, or Elkhart. They are driving across the state line because it is unreasonable to prohibit the purchase of these items in approximately 75 of the 83 Michigan counties. As you might expect, while those border county residents are purchasing their home improvement supplies in Ohio or Indiana, they are also buying groceries and filling their gas tanks. In summary, the Berrien County Board of Commissioners urges you to move forward with an objective plan of action for reopening our economy in conjunction with input from local governments and with continued attention to public health and safety. Very truly yours, Mac Elliott, Chair, on behalf of the Berrien County Board of Commissioners. Announcements and reminders. To my knowledge, we don't have any that haven't already been covered in other business. We are open, though, if someone has something that they want to announce or remind us of, this would be the time to chime in.
Mac?
Yes,
This is
Terry.
Commissioner Freeman. Just really briefly, I wanted to just acknowledge that in the last week, we've had a couple of different recognitions. Last week was Dispatcher Appreciation Week, Animal Control Appreciation, and also yesterday was Administrative Professional Day. And so I want to take the time to thank those individuals, but also all of the staff for Berrien County that they have helped make things move smoothly along. So I just wanted to make that recognition today.
Thank you. That's
Very
nice.
good, thank you. Anyone else have anything?
This is Commissioner Scott. Not to single anybody out, but Administrative Assistant Annette, whom some of us now consider to be the Zoom master. I want to thank her for all that hard work and trying to get these meetings up and running on time.
Thank you. We have concluded this part of the meeting and we're about to adjourn, if you vote to do so, for closed session to talk about pending collective bargaining. We also have one other matter that just came to my attention en route to the meeting this morning from Attorney Tom King, having to do with pending litigation. So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn this open session, go into closed session, both for purposes of negotiations connected with a pending collective bargaining agreement and matters under the attorney-client privilege involving pending litigation.
Commissioner Curran would like to make that motion.
Commissioner
Moved by
Scott
Curran.
will approve and second.
Moved by Kern, supported by Scott. Any discussion? This requires a roll call. Madam Clerk?
Yarborough,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Chickering,
Yes.
Ballrat. Our Ballrat there?
Dave, are you there?
He's muted.
He's gone?
Apparently.
Yeah, yes.
Muted.
Oh, you said yes.
Oh, he said yes, we just can't see it.
Freely,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Hugo,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Meeks,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 11 yeas.
Thank you. Before we go into closed session for those two identified reasons, anyone who's tuned in via the internet, when we're done, we will reconvene the regular Board of Commissioners meeting just for the purpose of adjourning. There will not be any votes or any action taken once we come back into open session. With that, I'll rely on technical advice on how to go about temporarily closing this meeting, and then we'll restart momentarily unless I'm told we need to take a couple minutes.
So Commissioners, I'm going to end the live portion of the meeting. You stay right where you're at. You don't need to go anywhere, and then I will be leaving the room. And then when I'm able to come back in and get us back going, we will do that. So I'm going to just stay put for just a second.